Good evening, and welcome to the candidates debate for the Wakefield School Committee in the upcoming annual town election on Tuesday, April 26. My name is Bill Carroll. I'll be moderating tonight's debate. This year, the candidates were given a choice of appearing in Zoom or appearing on Zoom or in the studio itself. Due to a number of candidates running for the committee, the debate will run for 90 minutes. This year's candidates for the three-year term on the school committee are Eileen Colleran, Kevin Fontanella, Alex Makarowicz, Tom Markham, Greg Spry, Carmen Sorrentino, and Amy Wall. Amy Wall is unable to join us this evening. We will have a videotape closing that she will provide. And Greg Spry is appearing on Zoom. Posing questions to the candidates tonight are Bob Burgess, editor of the Wakefield Daily Item, and Mark Sardellum, columnist for the Wakefield Daily Item. There'll be no opening statements in this evening's debate. Questions will be asked the candidates by one panelist. That candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to the question. Following response, each remaining candidate will have 1 minute to respond to the question. To allow for as many questions as possible, we will be maintaining a strict time method, okay? So if I cut somebody off, it has nothing to do with their response or anything like that. It's just that we've got to move along, and in fairness, try and keep them all the same. Questions have not been provided to the candidates in advance. Questions must be relevant to the issues important to the town, which I'm sure they will be, and questions of a personal nature will not be allowed. At the end of the debate, each candidate in turn will have the opportunity to present a 2-minute closing statement. As I said, strict compliance with the time frame. I'll try and keep things rolling along. Mark Sardell, you want to kick things off with a question to Eileen?
Sure. Two of the main areas of school committee responsibility are budget and policy. Are there specific budget or policy areas that you would want to address as a school committee member?
Yes. Thank you. I would like to address some of the policies for sure. Policy is something that I definitely want to be a part of. I would love to be a part of the subcommittee, the policy subcommittee, if I'm elected. I do think that there needs to be some changes updates for today's world. Just a few things that have come up over the past, year, for example. Providing safety in schools for all kids are some of the things that I think are necessary. One of the most troubling things that I found while going through the youth risk assessment form was seeing that 12% of our students have considered suicide, which I think is really troubling. So I think that some policies definitely need to be updated and to ensure safety in our schools and that our kids are feeling protected in our schools. And then, of course, budget. Yeah, absolutely. That the new high school is something that I'm really interested in and definitely support. And I would definitely work closely with everyone on the school committee and the school administration on how best to provide that.
Okay. Kevin, 1 minute follow-up.
Okay. Thank you very much for the moderators and my other colleagues here. This is great. So in terms of the budget, it's definitely a huge challenge. Being a teacher for the last 23 years, I've seen the challenges that districts have had trying to keep educational programs alive with budget constraints. One thing that I'm going to be very interested, if I am lucky enough to be put on the school committee, is to be looking at curriculum specifically and really making sure that when we look at our policy of curriculum, that for K through 12, that we're going to make sure that we have solid curriculums put in place that are going to help our students achieve what they can achieve. I also think the professional development for teachers is also very important, and I would definitely want to look at the budget and really look at what professional development programs are being put in place to really help our instructional practices.
Thank you.
Be good. Thank you.
Alex.
Yes. Well, when looking at the budget area, I went through, and what I was pleasantly surprised to see was there were extra funds or distribution of funds allocated towards the special education department, as well as a lot of focus on the wellness and mental health of our students, especially coming out of this pandemic. I think the district has done an amazing job this year moving that mission kind of forward and having that initiative at the top. For example, I noticed at the high school and middle school, they have potential interventionalists to be hired to come in. They saw the need and they addressed it. That's definitely one area I look forward to working with if elected, is on the budget. And then with policy, it's staying up with the current times, amending ones that need to be, and creating current ones. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom?
Thank you. Let me also thank WCAT and the panelists and my fellow candidates for this opportunity tonight. The biggest priority that I would have for the budget in the next couple of years is to really have a solid look at the reorganization and the reallocation of resources within the special education system of the programs that we have. I think it is time that we do some reorganization and some reallocation of staffing. I know some of that is underway, but I think we need to do that in earnest. I would also say that one of the critical things, certainly for FY23 and even 24, as we begin to walk away from some of the state and federal pandemic resources, the grant funding is drying up, that we need to be ever vigilant to make sure that we are prioritizing and we are making sure that the post-pandemic interventions that are so desperately needed, both academic and social, are available for all students.
Thank you. Carmen?
I also just want to thank the moderators and my colleagues for being here alongside me as well tonight, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. I agree with everything that my colleagues have said in terms of the high school. I am all for a new school. Who isn't? You have to be able to compete with the surrounding towns, and these surrounding towns are, they're evolving. We need to be able to evolve as well. But the reality is that I think policy and curriculum within the school should always come first before the shiny buildings and the big buildings. I think that, as Alexandra said, we need to be prioritizing especially special education and also mental health and mental wellness, especially after the pandemic. I didn't know that stat of 12% of students are considering suicide. And the fact that we have, school is a place where students should feel comfortable, and they should feel like they are benefiting from it at the end. And we don't want these people coming away from school feeling like they are not.
Thanks. Greg?
Thank you. With regard to policy, I'm not walking in with an agenda. I'm walking in with an open mind. When policies are brought to me, I'm going to consider them. So I want people who are considering me as a candidate to consider my character as a person when it comes to whether or not I should be on this committee. And with regard to budget, I do feel that whereas 80%, roughly speaking, of the budget is salaries, I think with 2 upcoming contracts in the near future, we have to be fiscally responsible when it comes to looking at the next contracts. And I think when you have someone who comes from the business world as a potential candidate, that's a good person to consider when it comes to that matter.
Thank you. Mr. Burgess, to Kevin.
Kevin, what would you like to see in a Wakefield education?
Oh, that's a great question. What I would like to see first in a Wakefield education is an educational system that does reach all students, and to create an equitable educational system so that all students can achieve in Wakefield Public Schools from pre-K through 12. Having said that, I've had a lot of conversations with people around town, and one one thing that I think about as an educator is for good reason, we always talk about, focus on our special education students. And a lot of parents like to focus on the advanced placement students. And one thing that often gets left behind in public educational circles is your average student, your base student that just kind of walks in and goes to a CP history class, CP English class. And I really think that we have to look at what educational system we are giving to our basic average student. And I'm not saying at all that I'm not saying we should take resources away from special ed or from the top. But I think that if you create a solid base educational system, pre-K through 12, and you actually hit our reading proficiencies and our mathematical proficiency scores at the right levels, I think it's going to raise all boats. I really do. And so for a perfect Wakefield educational system, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, I really am going to be looking at curriculum, instruction, making sure that our dedicated staff have the resources that are going to be necessary to achieve that vision, and make sure that every single student is going to be focused on. Okay, and I know it's easier said than done. I'm not pie in the sky kind of person, but I really do think that. If I'm lucky enough to get elected on the school committee, I'll be able to work with building administration and curriculum policy to make sure that comes into fruition. Thank you.
Alex, 1 minute.
I'd like to see a holistic education. We need to individualize the students we're teaching to. Not everybody's the same. I personally, I'm a see it, say it, read it, write it kind of person. I have more of the English history side of the brain versus science and math and STEM. But I was the average student that Kevin was speaking of, and I needed maybe more instruction on the STEM side, but not so much as the other. I have a lot of social skills and did a lot of extracurricular activities. Some students don't have that, or that's just not their thing. So being able to teach to the whole person, and I understand individualizing for every student is like a unicorn, a dream that we would all love to see, but having more intentional to do that. All right, my time's up. Thank you.
Okay. Tom, by the way, you have 10 seconds after I signal. For those at home, I'm signaling at 10 seconds to go, so I just want you to know that. You don't have to drop it right off. Tom Markham.
Thank you. What I would envision for Wakefield Public School education in the next 5 to 10 years would be a continuation of the types of quality teaching and learning that our outstanding educators have been providing for a number of years now. I think we as a community need to continue to provide better and better resources to be able to empower and enable the teachers to perform their task better and more inclusively. Certainly overall, I think we need to provide an environment where students feel safe and welcome and feel included. I think we want to provide students with an opportunity to get a good chance of being a good citizen, a good employee, a good employer perhaps, a good parent. At the end of the day, I think we want to provide a school system that allows students with a capacity to learn how to learn, not rote memorization, but a capacity toward investigation and research and inquiry.
Thank you. Carmen, 1 minute.
Yeah, and to reiterate what they've all been saying, again, I agree. We need we need an adaptable educational system to the point where every single student is being able to learn individually. Some students require it to be written on the whiteboard, and that's how they learn. Some students require to, be lectured to and write it down on their own. Whatever it may be, we need to, and obviously, like Kevin said, it's a pie in the sky sort of concept. We're always chasing perfection. It's going to be very difficult to get there, but we have to work toward that, and part of working toward that is developing our teachers as well, because at the end of the day, our teachers are the ones who are relating to our students. They are the ones who are, relaying this information to our students, and we need to make sure these teachers are prepared to create inclusive classrooms and help every student benefit from the Wakefield Public School System.
Thank you. Greg?
I think it's important to teach people how to think, not what to think. So I want to see a focus put on developing thought rather than dictating what needs to be split back out. I think it's important to make people critical thinkers and employable. I think it's important to focus on what I was raised with: reading, writing, and arithmetic. Getting back to the core focus of education. Thank you.
Okay, Mark.
I know Eileen.
Oh, Eileen, I'm sorry. See, that's because
No,
we
that's
started.
okay. Don't worry.
All right, thank you, boys.
It's
All
okay.
right, Eileen, you're up. Sorry. Yeah. That method worked, huh?
Don't worry about it. Can I start?
Yes, you
okay,
can.
great, fantastic.
All right.
Well, first of all, I think that we have phenomenal teachers in our school, and so I think that providing teachers the resources and education and continuing education will just help push us forward. I would love our schools to be able to meet kids at where they are at their learning journey. And I would like us to be able to identify, or not, I say us as a teacher, I'm sorry, the teachers to be able to identify the needs and learning support of students and learning acceleration as well, like you were saying as well. And I'm going to use the term lifelong learners, but that is something that was always ingrained in my head is teaching kids to be lifelong learners.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now, Mark, for Alex.
Okay. In light of the recent issue over Good Friday, how do you think religious holidays on the school calendar should be handled?
Oh, that is a great question, because I actually have been talking about it a lot. So for me, it was more of like the last minute, now what do I do with my kids, which I think we all kind of were feeling. Thank God for the Boys and Girls Club and Wakefield Academy. But we personally, our family, we are Greek Orthodox. So Friday was not our Good Friday. Our Good Friday is actually this upcoming Friday, the 22nd, and our Easter is the 24th. I think that looking forward at the school calendar and at contracts, it needs to be set out and done. There needs to be a clear plan. We either have the Good Friday off, or if a teacher can put in for it and it's not counted against them, they don't need to use a sick day, a personal day, and then any student that observes the holiday, the parents can call them out and it doesn't count as an absent, it's excused. I think the same should go for all religions, because we're not all the same. And like I said, my family's the perfect example of that. We're not the common religion in town. So I think being clear, knowing it up front, and consistency, and it's across the board for everybody, is kind of the way to go when looking at the religious holidays.
Thank you. Tom, 1 minute, Tom.
Thank you. So I believe that the public school calendar should not recognize any religious holidays. I think that we as a public school system need to be mindful and respectful of the fact that we live in a diverse community. We have many diverse people of faith, and we should provide opportunities for both staff and students to fully participate in their faith. And I don't believe that we would be in school through July if we began to recognize and have days off for every religious holiday. Which is why, frankly, a couple years ago, we began in earnest a conversation with the Teachers Association as well as other folks in town about the elimination of Good Friday as a day off. I think we probably collectively need to handle better how it went this year, and I think the calendar in general needs to have much more thought put into the process.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Carmen.
I as a Christian, obviously a little upset about, Good Friday not being a day off from school in Wakefield. But that being said, I think again we need transparency with these holidays as well. And I think that I'm not just upset as someone who's a Christian and Good Friday isn't taken off. I have Muslim friends. I have friends who have been, who are Buddhists and stuff like that. I think we should recognize these days, and I think. If it does lead us into later months into the summer, I think then we have to look at being more productive during the days when we are at school. I think the reality is that we're all religiously diverse. We're diverse as human beings, and we should, no matter the religion, no matter the beliefs, we should honor those days. And I think that's part of the learning process as students as well, understanding why, giving these students the chance to understand why we're taking these days off.
Thank you. Greg?
I think Good Friday should be a day off from school. I think that ultimately we are, while we are a diverse community, we're still overwhelmingly Christian. So therefore, it would be about 80% of people we're talking about that do celebrate that particular holiday. And for those who don't, they can certainly celebrate their own religious beliefs on a day off, given that it's a day off if the way I propose it to be a day off turns out to be. Ultimately, I think that this country's gotten away from God, and that's why we're dealing with so many of the other issues that we're dealing with.
Thank you. Eileen?
So the purpose of public school is to encompass all people, all religions, all ethnicities. And, so I agree with the school committee's decision to go back, I believe it was decided about 3 years ago, to get rid of Good Friday being a day off. So I understand that and I agree with it. However, I think this year was, and I used this terminology before, a little bit of a perfect storm. There was a couple different religious holidays that were falling on this day, and I think it maybe perhaps should have been looked at a little bit closely because it was also the Friday before April vacation. So I agree that definitely the calendar needs to be looked at a little bit better because it did leave parents a little bit in the lurch. But as for religious holidays being off, I mean, just like Tom said, if you have every religious holiday off, we're going to be in school year round. So that's what I think.
Thank you. Kevin?
I think that if a student and or his or her family, is observing a religious holiday, I do not think that a public school should at all not allow that student to observe that day. So I think that, in terms of an excused absence for a student, I definitely think that, if they're Christian, if they're Jewish, if they're Muslim, if they're, Eastern Orthodox, I do think that they should absolutely be allowed, no questions asked, to have an excused absence. I do agree with Tom that because we have such a diversity of faiths, even though Christianity is definitely the predominant religion, probably in Wakefield, it's because we can't really discriminate against faiths, we would end up having a lot of religious holidays. And so I definitely understand, the issue with going later into the school year. So I would just, I think my policy, if I was on the school committee, would be to not observe religious holidays, make it clear, at least equal across the board.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. Bob, I think you're up for Tommy Markham, correct?
Okay. Tom, what areas of a public school education does the town get right?
Tom, you have 2 minutes.
Well, that's a terrific question, Bob. Thanks. I think the town, first of all, I think the use of the word town is a great part of the question, because I believe it's the townspeople, the taxpayers, the parents, the homeowners, are the ones that provide the resources through the appropriation of funds that allow educators and administrators and paraprofessionals and others to do their good work. So I think the big thing about the town getting it right is their ability to quality support the schools on a financial basis each year. With regard to the outstanding staff that we have, I think we're on a path of continuous improvement. I think every year gets a little better. I think that we have certainly seen that in the last a number of years. We've seen everything now, notwithstanding COVID, right? COVID is a big blip in the middle of everyone's world. But in the pre-COVID times and even in the past year, we have seen, really increases in college attendance. We've seen increases in MCAS scores across the district. Certainly, there's areas of work to do, but I think we've got some really quality teaching opportunities. Teachers providing some outstanding learning opportunities. I think our priority for for performing arts and music education is outstanding. I think the type of work that we allow students to have for extracurricular activities and athletics, and diversity of the types of things that really every kid in the school should be able to find something that inspires their love of learning, whether they're a music kid or a sports kid or a club kid or a chess team kid like I was. You really have to. We provide all of these opportunities. I think that we really do it well.
Thank you. Carmen, 1 minute.
I mean, Tom hit it on the nail. I think that's the most important characteristic of a public school is the fact that it has a little bit to offer for everyone, unlike a private school where it's a little bit more tailored. There should be kids coming to every single school in Wakefield and feeling comfortable in their extracurriculars, with sports, with their teachers, with as a theater kid, as a music kid. The reality is, as a public school, diversity has to be diversity within the teaching staff, within the administration, within the students needs to be focused on, and needs to be a main focus of all of us on the school committee, because that's what makes a public school a public school.
Thank you. Greg, 1 minute.
May I have the question repeated? I could not hear it when it was initially asked.
Sure. What areas of a public school education does the town do well? Does the town get right?
The town has thus far produced some great education in this home with these 4 children. I would have to say that I've been pleased with what I've seen from the Galvin, from the Dolbear, from what Doug Lyons has put forth when he brings out his curriculum. And I've been quite pleased with how our children have excelled in the program, and especially some of the extras that the program has, such as but not limited to the performing arts.
Thank you. Eileen.
I think one thing that our Wakefield Public Schools has gotten right is our teachers. I think they're phenomenal. I've been through 5 years at Dolbear so far, and I haven't had a bad experience. I mean, they're phenomenal. They're supportive. They care about our students. And I've met with several teachers from the Galvin and from the high school. And again, phenomenal people. They care about our kids. The education I think that they're getting is great. There's rigor in the classroom. They're asking tough questions. I just think that's one of the many things that they have gotten right. So,
Thank you. Kevin.
Yeah, I'm a high school history teacher, and when COVID hit, my kids were in kindergarten and first grade, and my kids learned how to read. And the bottom line is, that's pretty impressive. I am really impressed with the elementary education that my kids have received so far. I hate to leave. I know I'm going to offend, some teachers. Like if I single some out, what Carmen said and what Greg said about the extracurricular activities. I mean, I've coached, I've worked with theater at my own high school, and the music and theater program here seems top notch. I always read in the item about the track program and how phenomenal it's doing. And just from my own high school experience, like a lot of times you need that one thing, you need that one experience, something's outside of school, and boom, that is the thing that will bring everything else together. So and from what I've seen so far, my kids are young. It's been great.
Thank you. Alex?
One thing that I believe our town and our district does right is they care. They care about our students. They care about our staff, the families, building a sense of community, not just within the districts and the schools, but between the district and the town. And that's clear, especially when you look at, the Warrior logo or masking. There's two sides, and both sides to all of these are so passionate, and it's because they care. And that's really, I think, the strongest thing we have going for us as a community and a district.
Thank you. Next is Mark to Carmen.
As kind of the logical follow-up to the last question, what areas do you think need improvement in the Wakefield Public Schools?
I'm a Wakefield Warrior for life, so I don't like to criticize too much. But from my personal high school experience as and just an entire experience as part of the Wakefield Public School system for 12 years, I would say we touched on this a little bit earlier. Just being more driven, being more individually driven, understanding that it being a public school, we have a lot of different personalities. We have a lot of different people with, different skill sets. They learn in different ways. They prefer certain ways of learning that other students don't. They have certain faiths, certain values, and it's understanding that within a public school compared to a private school, you're going to have to be dealing with that diversity. And so from a curriculum standpoint, from an environment standpoint, I would like to see teachers, administration be a little bit more wary of that reality within our public schools. Thank you.
Okay. Greg, 1 minute.
Taking parental input, not only taking it, but maybe even reaching out and soliciting it. Because frankly, when the parents have brought it to their attention, it's been met with a whole lot of resistance, we'll call it. So ultimately, I think that the school committee and the school system could take parental input and then use that to incorporate and shape the children's education. Thank you.
Thank you. Eileen, 1 minute.
Sure. I think one of the things that needs to definitely improve is intervention in the earlier grades to ensure that special needs are being met so that we don't have as many outplacements. A large portion of our special ed budget is from outplacements, and that a lot of the times that's due to not getting intervention at an earlier age. So ensuring that parents have the resources and teachers are keeping in close contact and administration with parents regarding special needs, IEPs are being met, 504s, all of that, and making sure that we reduce the amount of outplacements, which will also help our budget.
Thank you. Kevin, 1 minute.
So for the past school year, Wakefield has been focused, rightly so, on social emotional. Definitely the school closures and the pandemic definitely caused a lot of mental health issues that I think Wakefield did a great job addressing. I think one thing that we have to look to work on is I think we have to push a little bit more academic rigor. I firmly believe that if you set expectations higher, that students will respond. And I think that, we really, as we move into the future, we really have to look at setting high expectations for our students and really acknowledge that I think there's really very few limits in terms of how good our educational system can be. And I really think if we raise expectations and we set solid structures for kids to succeed, I really think that we can really, the sky's the limit in terms of how far we can go.
Thank you. Alex, 1 minute.
Family engagement. I think we all know that a student will succeed better academically if they're taking what they learned in the classroom and bringing it home. My mom always used to say, homework is just practice. If you can't get it, that's okay. You go in the next day, you tell your teacher, and you'll get some extra assistance in it. I don't like the term, helicopter parent. I prefer to call myself enthusiastic. But I'm involved actively in my children's education. And I think that if we can bridge that gap for all families, our students are going to excel way beyond our expectations.
Thank you. Tom, 1 minute.
Thank you. I think first and foremost, the thing we need to do is we need to continually get better at inclusion. I think we need to continually get better at making sure that students feel welcome and have the opportunity to learn and to grow. We need to make sure that we provide better environments for kids to feel they have a trusted adult outside of a parent in their life. Often kids come to school in the most difficult of days, difficult of times, and the school system becomes their most solid part of their day. And we need to make sure that those kids are taken care of and supported, just like all other students are. I think we need to make sure that we, in the coming, both this year and going into next year, make sure we need to settle the teacher and other contracts, to make sure the salaries are competitive, so we can recruit, train, and retain students. We need to improve our facilities. We need a new high school. We need to keep our technology turning over to keep it current, both for students' use in the classroom and for use at home.
Carmen, did you kick that off? I did, yes. Okay, all right, keeping track. So, Mark to Eileen.
It's Bob, isn't it?
Oh, it's Bob to Eileen, sorry. Greg, wow, I really wrote that down the wrong way. Bob to Greg, which I have written down here, thank you.
We're here to help.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Tom. I wrote it down, too. Go ahead, Bob to Greg, sorry.
What's happening? Does the town need a new high school?
2 minutes.
I guess that was to you, Greg.
Greg.
Does the town need a new high school?
Does the town need a new high school is
Yes.
the question.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And
The
why?
answer is yes,
And
it
I wrote
does.
it down.
Yes, it does. And I would be, I'm ecstatic at the prospect of working hand in hand with the administration in order to get there. I've been following along ever since we moved to town. I mean, and now that we're already into phase 4, I believe, the progression is, we're getting there. And I'm looking forward to working with my fellow school committee members to make sure that that gets done responsibly. But ultimately, it's a town-wide decision, and we know we need people to fund it. So I hope that whether you are just in town without children, parents of current children, or, like I've met so many people on the campaign trail, and they've said, well, I've already raised my kids, so I'm not that interested in the school committee. Well, there are things that, you as a town member still need to be invested in when it comes to the topic of the schools. And I think a new high school is one of them. In fact, one person said to me, I'm very excited about the prospect of the new high school because it's going to do great things for my property value. So everybody in town is aware of this. Everybody has their interest in it. But ultimately, the interest should be for the children. And that's what we're all focused on. And moving this along, continuing the momentum that we have, and ultimately deciding and funding a new high school is what this town needs to do.
I think we can all agree that this is sort of one of the overriding issues in this election. So I'm going to give everybody 2 minutes if you want to take it, okay, for this question? Okay? All right, Eileen, you're next, 2 minutes.
Well, now that I have 2 minutes now. So yeah, yes, we need a new high school. As much as I love walking through the halls of Wakefield High School and reminiscing of my high school days, I graduated 20 years ago, and nothing, I don't think, building-wise has changed much, which is, that definitely needs to change. We raised the bar when we built Galvin, and Galvin is beautiful, and we have beautiful elementary schools that are updated as well. Not all of them, but most of them. And so our kids are going from these elementary schools with all this technology, and then they're going to the Galvin, and it's fantastic, and then they're coming to the high school. And so I think we need to keep that level there. And we need to create a 21st century facility for them. And just like Greg said, it's not just an education investment, it's an economic investment. So property values are going to go up, workforce is going to go up. There's going to be a lot of economic opportunities. So it's not just for education. It would benefit the entire town. So yes, I am definitely in favor of the high school.
Kevin, 2 minutes.
Okay, so I worked at a high school that was built in 1953, and we just tore it down. And this is really our first year with students inside the building at Saugus. So I'll give the easy answer. Yes, we do need a new high school because, I mean, the science classrooms that we have now they're like a college classroom. They can do labs that you can probably do at UMass Amherst or any state college around. It's that impressive. The Performing Arts Center is amazing. I mean, you could probably have bands come in there and perform. It really is amazing. There's open education spaces where you can actually do different types of instruction that you can't do in a traditional high school. And so I echo what Greg and Eileen have said, and what probably everyone's going to say. But the hard part is the cost. I mean, we can't ignore the fact that this is going to be an expensive project. And I think that the school committee's responsibility is definitely going to be to educate the public about this, and and it has to be definitely front and center, because you guys have been through the process with the Galvin, so you know exactly what the process is, and we just have to make sure that in order to make sure that we can marshal enough public support, maybe from parents or people that do not have kids in the school system right now. That is something that definitely has to get done to make sure that the plan goes into fruition. So yes, in the high school, and we got to get out there and educate the public.
Alex, 2 minutes.
Alrighty, so yes, we all can agree, obviously, we need a new high school. We need to be competitive with other communities around us, and we all feel like our children deserve the best of the best. So yes, for the new high school, but then looking realistically, so we have it, we have the new Galvin, then what? We need to plan further than that. How are we going to maintain these new buildings that we are putting up for our students, for our children to learn for their future? I actually learned through my campaign that the district used to have a maintenance portion of our budget, but then years ago it had kicked back to the town. I think looking into that, potentially bringing that back into the district's budget to maintain the buildings that we are putting up, and like Eileen had mentioned, some of the elementary schools that have had renovations and things, to maintain that. One of the biggest questions I was asked while I was collecting signatures was if I was in favor of the new high school or not. And then the follow-up was, how can we justify building a new high school when we can't maintain the buildings we currently have? And that is what I think should be in the back of all of our minds as we do move forward with the new high school. So yes, for it, but let's think even more into the future of how to keep it up to date.
Tom, 2 minutes.
Thank you. First, let me just quickly respond to Alex and say that I think we do a very fine job at maintaining the buildings that we have. We have a really strong maintenance staff that does work for the schools, and I think we've developed in the course of recent years some real quality working relationship with the town. They are public buildings and owned by the town, and I think we have continued to put more resources toward building maintenance. There were many years where we struggled with that, but I think we're doing well these days. I think the big picture question, the big picture answer to this question is we, the school committee, in regard to a new high school. Well, first of all, I suppose I should answer the question. Yes, I'm wholeheartedly supportive of a new high school. In fact, I sit on the Wakefield High School on the building committee as the school committee's one of two representatives. Dr. Piscatello and I are on the committee. We, the school committee, are a two-prong. We are an employer and we are educators. I think one of the most important things also about the building is we need to recognize that the shape that it's in, its age, and its really deplorable parts, we're not providing a quality enough environment for our teachers and our staff. It is a workplace for them. They come every day and they need to be involved and need to be able to have a safe, comfortable, quality work environment. I think that obviously then leads itself to the type of workplace that we're providing them, means that we're also providing a quality environment for students in which they can learn in a diverse set of environments. Kids walk around this building, parts of the building they're wearing T-shirts, the other part of their building they're wearing parka jackets. There's lots of things, work that needs to be done. I think also the New England Association of Schools and Colleges putting us on probationary status certainly is something that we need to react to, and I think we are. We are almost 2 years into this project, and there's a long road ahead.
Thank
but
you.
I think we're almost there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Carmen.
Again, the answer is yes. I mean, usually to the ones who oppose it, and even my own parents are wary of it, just because the reality is that if you don't have kids, in the school system, where you're not going to have them, or they've already been through, it's tough to be able to want to be in on that economic cost that it brings. But I think what we need to realize as a town is that it's bringing just as many economic benefits, and let's look to our students and our staff, our teachers and our administration as well, the benefits that they're going to reap from it. Tom was just mentioning about the facilities, their classrooms, their offices. It's just going to be a better space, a better environment for teaching and for learning. And that's the reality. I don't think, at the end of the day, reality has to set in at some point. We have to evolve, we have to adapt, we have to keep up with the surrounding towns. And we need to be able to provide our students of the present and of the future with the best possible resources to not just be great students, but to be great people in our community and in our societies and across the world.
Thank you. All right. Next is Mark to Eileen.
Okay. A majority of the Wakefield voters said they wanted to keep the old Warrior logo. How do you think the school committee handled that issue?
2 minutes. Go ahead.
Sure. I think they handled it well. I think they handled it to the best of their ability. I don't think this was a function of the school committee that they were prepared that they had to deal with. Logos are not usually something that the school committee would really have a say in. But remember that it first came to the school committee by the Student Advisory Council. I believe that's the council that they're called. What I think that's what it is. And the youth council. So the youth council came to the school committee that they wanted the logo changed. And while yes, we are Carmen said I'm a warrior forever. I'm a Wakefield warrior. I graduated in 2002. I get it, but this school belongs to them, and they are the current students at the school. Furthermore, the Wakefield logo, the previous logo, was offensive. There were many Native American panelists who said that it was offensive, and if it offends one kid, then get rid of it. I'm going to quote my 9-year-old, if it hurts one person, we need to get rid of it. And my 9-year-old said that. So if a 9-year-old can understand that, I think most people can understand that.
Thank you. Kevin, 1 minute.
Yeah, I mean, the school committee is in charge of policy, and it was definitely under the purview of the school committee to decide whether or not to keep the logo or to change the logo. In terms of transparency, I was pretty well educated last year, and I think it was very transparent, all the process with the youth council and everything that took place. I know that there was a lot of controversy over the logo issue. One thing I would say is I did watch the forum where you had the Native American tribal leaders. I did watch that, and I really think one thing that came across to me from that conversation and from the presentations was that a lot of them were really interested in how we instruct our students and actually teach them accurate history of the relation of Native American history within the state of Massachusetts. And I really think that that is something that was very important to them and something that I would like to push forward.
Thank you. Thank you. Alex, 1 minute.
I think the school committee did the best that they could with what they had. It was something that clearly divided this town, and still keeps a lot of us on separate sides of the fence. They went through the right motions. Like Kevin had said, policy is one of the 3 areas that fall into the realm of a school committee. And they did what they had to do. They listened to the students, they talked among themselves. As much as a lot of us feel our voices weren't heard if we wanted to keep the logo, at the end of the day, they did hear us. They just chose to vote a different way. So I think they did the best, like I said, with what was in front of them.
Thank you. Tom, 1 minute.
I haven't had to answer this question in quite a while, Mark, so thanks for asking it. No, in all seriousness, because it's a very important issue, and I do appreciate the question. I think as a matter, the town's vote was after the school committee had already voted, just as a matter of procedure. So the school committee had to go back and revisit its own work, which didn't happen. But part of what did happen is the school committee passed a 12-point resolution that had to do with many things regarding the Native American community, not just the logo itself. And one of the many things that came out of the positive, in some, and I would agree, a very, very difficult exchange. Very difficult sides were drawn, lines were drawn, and some controversy there. I think what did come out was a much more extensive look at how Native Americans would like themselves to be viewed by the community, and I think about how we as educators and we as town officials should be sharing the types of views that Native Americans have of themselves and of the community at large. One thing that I do want to say is in the time since the first logo was originally drawn, Wakefield Public Schools have had 4 different iterations of the logo. Each time was changed by students, and this is the first time that there was controversy around it.
Thank you.
Students wanted it to change,
Thank you.
and it should have been driven that way.
Carmen.
Yeah, just to reiterate what everyone's been saying, I thought the school committee did the best they could do with the situation they were given. Obviously, it's a very passionate topic, and we have people standing on both sides of the fence. Me personally, I don't believe that removing the logo is going to solve the issues that people are looking to be solved. Listen, absolutely, we need to listen to the Native American tribes. These people, we need to be able to understand where they're coming from. If they personally were not in favor of the logo, we should certainly grant that request if it's an overwhelming majority who believe that. But the reality is this, like Kevin said, I think it starts in the classroom as well. It's celebrating their history. It's educating our students on their history, just as we're trying to do with Black history, trying to teach our students, the facts and the history of these people. I just don't see, fighting over a logo, I don't see how that gets us anywhere as a community.
Greg.
You get to be on the school committee by a majority of votes, and then a majority of votes tells you to do something with the logo, and you say, we know better. I don't see how that equates. So ultimately, I think they did a poor job. I think they need to get a real hand on the pulse of the community, and the majority of the community wanted that to be retained. And there was, for everyone who was hurt one way, there were other people who were hurt another. There was a young lady named Starcatcher the night of they rammed through the vote, and she was saying that it equates to another form of genocide by taking away that, basically saying that you're trying to strip us away from society and to make it disappear. So, you can make the argument, oh, you hurt one person this way, well, you can hurt the other person that way. At the end of the day, I think it's a matter of character, and it was a red flag on the character of the committee, and they furthered that point later with the masks.
Okay, thank you. Bob to Kevin. 2 minutes, Kevin.
Kevin, in your opinion, and I'm not just talking about the Wakefield public school system, but has political ideology become too embedded in the curriculum?
That's a great question. So I've been teaching history for 23 years. And I will not lie, in the last 5 years, there has been a little bbit of an edge sometimes within the classroom based on events that are happening, outside, Saugus, Massachusetts. It's a lot of national polarization. So I cannot lie, it has impacted the environment. But having said that, when you're a teacher and you're setting up a classroom, and you want to set up an critical thinking, and you want to, like I think Greg might have said before, that we don't want to just teach, the memorization. We want to actually teach students how to debate, how to look at these different points of view, and actually how to make cohesive arguments, to be lifelong learners. When I set up my history classroom, 23 years ago, there were controversial topics. There were controversial issues 100 years ago. There's controversial issues now. As long as our dedicated teachers, set up a classroom environment that allows students to take these ideas and to debate these ideas and have the facts put there for them, and then to have one viewpoint, another viewpoint, and both of them to be given equal weight by the teacher. I think that all of these issues around us, are going to have a negative effect. In the end, it's a job of our educators, and I firmly believe our staff in Wakefield is completely qualified to do this, and I think they are doing it. I haven't heard anything to the contrary. I believe that as long as you're presenting the evidence, and that you're not, and teachers aren't preaching, but they're actually showing both sides. I think that the polarization can really be overcome. And in the end, if you do that, I think it actually will help defeat the polarization by allowing people to have good faith arguments. And that's a job.
Thank you. Alex, 1 minute.
Simple answer, yes. And I think anybody can see that. You could move to another state and just walk into a school committee meeting there, or speak with parents in the community, speak with the middle school, high school students, and without even asking them that question, you're gonna get the answer yes. I think a lot of it starts way higher up than people actually realize. It's not really starting at the district level. It's not starting with our teachers. Our teachers and staff are doing their job, like Kevin had said. They're doing what is being put in front of them to teach, what curriculums to follow, and then it's up to the staff member of how they really get that point across, or that message to the students. But it starts a lot higher up than the district level, and I think because it comes higher up, that's why it is more in our schools than I think it ever has, at least for me in my age and what I've seen.
Thank you. Tom, 1 minute.
Thank you. The concern I have isn't so much about ideology as it is, politics. And I think that politics is embedding itself too much in our society, drawing too many lines. We need to be much more at the 50-yard line and talk about things that make us together as a community of educators and a community of learners than the things that separate us. I also think that the ancient Greeks, that they got it right. They got it right, the things that they taught us very early on. And education is about inquiry. And education is about appreciating and understanding even things that we may not agree with, but things that we can still learn. We can understand things that we don't agree with, but we can certainly be respectful and mindful in that. I think in education we need to trust our educators, and we need to trust the individuals that we place in the front line, our teachers and our paraprofessionals and our administrators. Critical thinking demands an appreciation that students understand the world around them.
Thank you. Carmen, 1 minute.
Yeah, the short answer is yes. I mean, I think politics have definitely been embedded in not just, our classrooms here in Wakefield, but I've seen it in college. I've seen it, I've heard it from people, throughout this country in high schools and in colleges. But the reality is this, obviously I don't want politics to be too embedded into our schools, but just going back to what Kevin and what Greg said earlier, that we want to create an environment where teachers are not teaching what to think, rather they're helping these students on how to think. And that's exactly what we can achieve by having civil debates, civil communications between, someone who believes in one thing or someone who believes in another. We're never going to be able to get closer to that 50-yard line if we don't have these conversations. So it really it boils down to the teachers and the administrators being able to create a classroom in an environment where the facts, the evidence are presented. And we have students respectfully understanding where others are coming from while also stating their opinions and beliefs.
Thank you. Greg?
Thank you. Yes, I believe it's been more embedded in the curriculum, but that happens at such a high level, as someone referenced earlier, that that's not something that's going to be, that would be immediately on our watch as the school committee. I feel like that's more on our watch as parents and as voters. When you start to vote, you know, when people start to give you their ideologies and how it relates to education, you need to say, okay, this is who I'm aligned with. And is it going to be someone who wants to tell you what to think, or is it going to be someone who just wants to shape thinking? And ultimately, I think that's what it needs to be about. We need to be more focused on educating young critical thinkers. And, you know, I think also another important thing to not get lost on is the fact that teachers are the last line of defense, and they're the ones that are going to ultimately disseminate the information to the children. And I trust, based on the teachers I know in Wakefield, that that's going to be a healthy dissemination of information.
Thank you. Eileen.
I trust our teachers and how the curriculum is taught in schools. I was a history teacher for 8 years. I like think of myself as a historian. When you are going to college and you're learning about how to teach history, you know, we learn to teach it objectively and not subjectively. And so we tell the facts. We let them think for themselves. One of my favorite things to do was to go over something and say, what did you think about that? How do you feel? How would you feel if that was you? And the kids decide for themselves. I loved that. That was one of my favorite things about teaching. I always had a quote on the board. I believe it's Voltaire. I may not agree with what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. We always had an understanding in the classroom that we would respect the opinions of others, and I think Wakefield does a really great job of that.
Okay. Now we have Mark's question to Alex.
Absent a state mandate, are there any circumstances under which you would support a new mask mandate for Wakefield Public Schools?
Had to pick me for that question as one of the people who stood up for the mask policy to end and become parental choice. So the long short answer is yes. I have children on both sides of the masking debate. I have 3 kids that are all on IEPs for various disabilities. 2 of them is more for articulation, or my oldest is autistic, so being able to see faces and expression is very beneficial for him. My youngest, on the other hand, was born with a lot of health complications, and he actually has compromised lungs. So wearing a mask for him causes more damage than good. So as much as our community wants to think that I was just crusading to end it, that isn't necessarily the case. I understand both sides of that argument. I knew the families that just wanted it to end and the families who were scared because they had children either going to school that had health complications or another child or family member at home who were susceptible to it. That at the end of the day, I'm not going to 100% jump in and agree to a new mask policy unless it is kind of the end-all be-all last resort. I will stick with my conviction of I believe it should be parental choice unless, you know, heaven forbid, knock on wood, the numbers spike again in COVID. We're talking, you know, state shutdowns, things like that. Then my mind frame and my position would obviously shift a little bit more, but it would take that kind of situation for me to believe that. I think parental choice right now is the way to go.
Okay. Tom, 1 minute.
Thank you. I agree with Alex and probably just about everything that she said. We had a very difficult time in the last couple of years making these types of choices. We used the best, I believe, the best science, the best medical and best public health advice that we had that was available at the time. They weren't easy decisions. There were people on both sides, majorities and minorities. But at the end of the day, the school committee is responsible for making a decision that does its best in an abundance of caution to take care of all students and all staff. So absent a state mandate, No, I cannot think of a time where I would support reinstitution of universal masking. Certainly, if there's something that the local, our Board of Health determines, or there's some catastrophe in one of our buildings, or an environmental health concern, I could certainly something like that. But I would probably see us evacuating the building before we would have people in it requiring masks.
Thank you. Carmen?
Yeah, I absolutely agree with Alex and Tom. Again, I'm all for parental choice. Again, it's, if it's not for the parents, if it's not for the students, then there is no school committee, there is no schools, and we need to be able to respect their personal freedoms. And at the end of the day, we're always going to have people on both sides of the fences, but I just feel like from what I've heard from students particularly, there's been more harm than good come out of these mask mandates. Now, obviously, if there was a statewide mandate, at some point you have to give in to that. But right now, I think we should give each and every student, every parent, the right to decide whether or not they want to wear it, because it is infringing upon some of our students' ability to learn, to socialize, to feel comfortable at school, from K through 12.
Greg?
Thank you. There's absolutely no circumstance which I would agree to a mask mandate on the children ever again. I was one of the biggest proponents of taking them off them as soon as possible. I saw the detrimental effects they had, both in learning and in emotional issues that they were causing. I also saw how COVID arcs would spike and then come back down again, regardless of, I hate that word, regardless of masks being worn or not. Ultimately, it's like the south side of the lake in the winter. Like, they put up that nice orange fence, but the snow always blows through it and onto Church Street. Well, the reality was COVID would blow through a mask that was worn by a child at school the same way it would by a kid not wearing a mask. So they were useless in my opinion. I think that there's not a single circumstance where I'd ever vote for them. And the detriments and harms caused to the children were far too long. And I didn't like that the school committee tried to string it out an extra 2-3 weeks.
Eileen?
Barring any, statewide mask mandate or from the Department of Education, I don't really foresee why I would ever vote for masks to come back into effect. Obviously, if the Department of Education or the state of Massachusetts decides, come the fall, winter, that we need to wear masks again, obviously, I would support that. But yeah, I really don't see that coming back or any other reason why it would have to come back. But, I do support the families in town who are still wearing their masks. And I think kids in our community are totally supportive of that. I love seeing the smiling, beautiful faces that are coming out of our schools. But then I see some kids with masks too, and that's okay. Everyone's doing what is comfortable for them right now. And obviously that is something I support.
Thank you. Kevin?
As someone who's been teaching and enforcing mask mandates, for the last 2 years, I am glad they are gone now. It definitely makes, selfishly, my job easier. In terms of a hypothetical situation where I would support a mask mandate being put back in schools, I'd love to say never. I think we've been saying never multiple times during this pandemic. So I would say I would not support putting a universal mask mandate without DESE, short of a massive hospitalization spike randomly that just hit Melrose, Wakefield. It didn't hit the rest of Massachusetts, but seeing that that's pretty unlikely, I couldn't really see myself, seeing us being in that position. So yeah.
Okay. This is going to be the last question. Bob to Tom. Everybody 1 minute on this question, okay? All right.
In your opinion, Tom, and everybody else, are we starting to get back to normal in the classroom after as the pandemic subsides?
Yes, we are. I think there's an element we've been talking about for over a year called, what the new normal might be, and I think we are still refining and adjusting that. But I think that's really since September of this year, really, we're now 5 months plus into the school year, I think we have landed very nicely on that place. It wasn't without frustration. It wasn't without some anxiety. It wasn't without a level of cooperation and collaboration with teachers and with staff to make sure that it was something that would work for kids and work for staff. But I think we are. I think there are going to be elements of the pandemic that I think we're going to see some benefit from. One might be the introduction of the universal use of Zoom and those type of technologies. That's a good thing. That made lots of things efficient. I don't mean teaching and learning. I mean the rest of the world.
Okay. Carmen,
Yeah, I mean,
1 minute.
it's a very unprecedented thing that happened, and I think, we are making progress, but the reality is there's always going to be setbacks after something like that happens. Just to touch on what Tom said, I mean, for the past few years, it's been all negative, it's been all bad. I think we can, as crazy as it sounds, we can start to, view our progression from that in a positive light. Like you said, the Zoom coming into the picture and, gaining knowledge of that. How about, people now being aware of, medicinal things, people being aware of just keeping themselves more physically and mentally healthy, so that we can be prepared for another pandemic. We can be prepared for another for something else like this, and especially for the teachers and for the administration, for the town as a whole. I think we gained a lot of experience as a community, fighting together, working together. The school committee working through everything, and obviously, we never want a pandemic. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying I'm happy it happened.
Thank you.
But thank you.
Greg.
Thank you. While we're back to business as usual in the classrooms, I think the return to normal isn't where we were before all this started, because there's such an impact on learning loss for the younger children, and I've found an emotional impact that it's had on the older children. We're going to be wrestling with this for years to come, and I think it's just on a daily basis that we address it, and we continue to put our focus on repairing those losses as part of our new normal.
Thank you. Eileen?
While I think we are definitely on the right track, there was definitely some loss over the past couple years, not just in the classroom and academically, but social and emotionally as well. Some of our kids are really suffering, and I'm going to point out that youth risk behavior assessment again, and it's clear from that and from the results of that. And so, the school adding in 2 more adjustment counselors, I believe, at the high school, or one at the high school and one at the Galvin, that is definitely going to help alleviate and add some more resources into our schools. So I definitely think we're on the right track. We've got some ways to go. This was a tough couple of years, but we made it together.
Kevin?
Short answer, yes. I think we are back to normal now in the classroom, but Greg and Eileen are absolutely right. There has been significant learning loss. There has been significant emotional damage that has been caused. And April vacation is going to be over, and we're going to be in May, and the summer's coming. I think the school committee has to really plan this summer to hit the ground running next September to address these losses. We can't just pretend this didn't happen. We really have to be so we're back to normal now, but we really have to make sure when we hit the ground running in September that we have to have things put in place to help accelerate our way out of this loss that we have faced with the pandemic.
Thank you. Alex?
After a traumatic event, you're never the same. And I don't think our classrooms will ever be the same as they were prior to the pandemic. We have all lived through so much these past 2 years that we need to create our identity again. We need to decide and critically look at where we are now and start from there. Not go back 2 years and look at where we were academically or social emotionally, but look at where we are now. Look at where the staff is now, the families are now in the community, and move forward from there. I mean, I agree with Kevin. We can't act like it didn't happen. and we just have to keep going forward, whatever means necessary to ensure that at the end of all of this, we're all okay.
What we're going to do is, for the closings, because Amy Walls is videotaped, and to help the folks at CAT, we're going to let her go first, okay? And then I thought what we'd do is we'd go in the same order that we asked the questions. Is that, we'll do that instead of alphabetical. I won't be able to comprehend that. Okay, so we're going to start with that, and then you're going to have 2 minutes closing, and I'll introduce you for your start, okay? So in the control room, we ready to go with Amy Wall?
Hi, I'm Amy Wall, and I'm running for re-election for a school committee. Thank you to WCAT for hosting this event tonight. I apologize that I can't be there in person. Education is very important to me, and I'm continuing my own education and will be in class tonight during the debate. I remain committed to listening to parents and teachers, as both play an integral part of our students' success. Without the strong commitment that our teachers display day in and day out, our students won't be able to thrive academically or emotionally. I will continue to be a voice and question the status quo. I will continue to advocate for mental health services for all of our students. I hope over the past year that I have made you not only proud, but have made you pay closer attention. We need strong voices, and I hope that I can be that voice for you again. I'm asking for your support and your vote on April 26th. Please feel free to reach out to me with any questions. I look forward to speaking with as many people as I can. Thank you again, and have a great night.
Okay. Eileen?
I want to thank Bill, Mark, and Bob and Wakefield Community Access TV for putting this forum together. I want to close with a few important notes about myself and my campaign. As a former teacher and now a parent of children in Wakefield Public Schools, I know the issues that face our families, students, teachers, and community. I have had many conversations with parents, community members, and educators on the issues that are important to them over the past few weeks. If I am elected, I will ensure that our students get back onto previous benchmarks in order to compete against neighboring communities, as well as provide schools with enough support for special education and the social emotional health of all students. I will make sure that all parents, all students in our community are represented and protected, all of them. I am committed to ensuring that policies and procedures are updated to reflect the best practices in today's world. The policy subcommittee, again, is one that I am definitely interested in if I am elected onto school committee, and I hope that I would make some positive change there and to represent the parents of Wakefield, the students of Wakefield. Our students deserve the best resources and need to stay current with technology to be prepared to enter college and beyond, and a new high school is essential, and I promise to maintain the progress toward that state-of-the-art high school. If I'm elected to the school committee, I will be a dedicated member of the team working to address the concerns of the community. I will attend meetings prepared, ask tough questions, and will not shy away from disagreement. I will engage with you to understand your point of view and represent you to the best of my ability. I will lead with empathy, compassion, and understanding.
Thank you. Kevin?
I believe that my background and experience as an educator for the past 23 years will help our school committee, if I am deserving enough to be elected, navigate the environment that we are now facing. We cannot put our head in the sand and ignore the learning loss and the emotional damage that the pandemic and the related school closures have brought upon our students. But I can't emphasize this enough. We also cannot get lost in a wave of negativity that hurts our ability to unite around the one thing that we all care about and we all have in common, which is the welfare of our students. I am passionate about education. It's about the pride that students exhibit when they master new skills, about the magical aha teaching moment when both teacher and student realize that something has been learned. These moments are why I am a lifelong educator and why I want to help our building administrators, our dedicated staff in Wakefield, improve upon the instructional quality in our public schools. I promise you that I will work with everyone on the committee and collaborate with everyone on the committee to oversee a system that doesn't just maintain, but accelerate our students' learning trajectories so we can overcome the deficits that we have faced so far. Now, again, I'm not going to lie, this is going to be challenging, but this is an inspiring challenge. And I can't wait to be working with our superintendent and our staff to accomplish this. And my final point is, communication is so important between the school committee and the citizens that elect us. And I hope to build a sense of trust between our citizens and the school committee, because trust that we're all in this together, that's what's going to be necessary for us to work together to achieve our goal in accelerating our way to a marquee school system. Thank you very much for the time and opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Alex?
All right. I'd first like to thank WCAT for hosting this debate tonight. Everyone throughout our community who has supported me through this election, my friends and my family. If elected, I look forward to working to ensure that current policies are enforced, that they are looked at and amended if necessary, and creating new policies that reflect the current climate and social and economical society at the time. Working to ensure that our budget funds are allocated that reflect the needs of our students, our staff, and our district. Special education is an area that is near and dear to my heart that I would love to work with to ensure that we have the staffing and the resources so that all students have what they need to be able to access our general curriculum. I think it's important that they are successful both inside and outside the classroom and social emotionally. I have the education, the background, the knowledge, and the skill set to serve on our school committee effectively and efficiently. I bring a wide and unique range of skills to the table, but more importantly, I have the want and the desire to do this. I have 3 young sons in the school system that they got to make it through, and I want them to have the best of the best. At the end of the day, I want what everybody in our community wants, to provide our children with the best education possible. It's our children, our school, and our voice. And I would love to be that voice for all of you. So I humbly ask for your vote on April 26th, and I look forward to seeing you all at the polls.
Thank you. Tom?
Thank you. I would also like to thank WCAT and Bill, Bob, and Mark for your contributions tonight to making this forum so valuable, and obviously to my fellow candidates for bringing this to life. I've chosen to run for re-election to the school committee as I am keenly focused on the future of our schools and, more importantly, the increasing quality of education offered and demanded for our children and its impact on the quality of life of our town. In my time on the school committee, I believe I've worked hard at providing dedicated, experienced, common sense leadership to the decision-making process. I believe I can continue to make a difference and ask each of you to join me in doing so. With so much at stake for our children, experience matters and effectiveness matters. The complexity of the school committee work requires a depth of knowledge and array of skills that I have honed over the years. I have 5 priorities to share during this campaign and pledge to bring each to the forefront if re-elected. 1, the construction of a new high school. 2, the ensuring post-pandemic recovery for all students, especially in academic interventions. 3, the reorganizing and right-sizing of the special education staffing and services. 4, the settling of competitive, fair, and affordable collective bargaining agreements. And 5, building stronger partner relationship with teachers and staff. If re-elected, I will continue to work hard to support and to lead each of these efforts. As a son and grandson of teachers and a grandson and nephew of police officers, I was raised in a home that values education, justice, and trustworthiness. I learned at a young age that hard work and honest effort, respect for others will serve us well in life. I've tried hard to bring this work ethic to my professional and civic work, and if re-elected, will continue to strive to serve the best interests of students and families, teachers and staff, citizens and taxpayers of the town of Wakefield. I respectfully ask your consideration in casting one of your 3 votes on the ballot the next Tuesday, April 26th. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Carmen?
Yeah, I also want to thank the WCAT and the moderators for being here tonight, for allowing this to be possible. I have no outline. I have no fancy words. I don't have the experience. I may not have the education, required to be on the school committee. But the bottom line is this: what I do have is I have hunger, I have passion, and I have empathy for the parents and the students of this town. The reality is this: our general public, the parents who make our schools possible, who make our communities possible. They have been undermined, they have been ignored. And for those who feel their voices have been ignored, those who feel they have been overlooked, I'm here to fight for you. I'm not here to be fancy. I'm not here for my own personal gain. I'm here to create an environment that all teachers, that all staff, that all students can go to bed at night and look forward to going to and being a part of the next morning. And that's exactly what I will be for this community. I will fight for each and every one of you. I will listen to every voice, and I will commit to the public good. Again, I humbly ask for your vote on April 26th, next Tuesday. And thank you.
Greg.
Thanks, everyone. On April 26th, we, the parents and people of Wakefield, have an opportunity to help shape the next 3 years of our children's experience in the Wakefield Public Schools. We need to elect committee members with a strong moral compass, common sense, and conviction. Members who have the resolve to abstain from using the power that comes with the position when the call for action is no call at all. One of the key responsibilities of the school committee is to manage the school's department's budget. The biggest portion of the budget is salaries. When it comes time to negotiate contracts for ISPs and for the full-time teachers, I assure you that my experience in business with the union workforce will aid in creating fair contracts for teachers with fiscally responsible measures taken for the taxpayers. I do not come to you with an agenda. I come to you with a servant's heart, from a home where we instill love of God and love of neighbor. At home, I promote ways of living that are in line with Wakefield Public Schools' core values, and that is evidenced by the recognition my children have received from the Wakefield Public Schools. My 2 oldest daughters have been recipients of the Galvin 4-Star General Award. My youngest daughter was honored at the Wakefield Educational Foundation's Celebration of Learning last week. And my 2nd grade son has received multiple certificates in recognition of his kindness towards his peers. If the results of the ideas I shape and teach at home are honored by the Wakefield Public Schools, then I trust more of the same will follow in the student body if I am elected to the school committee. Please use one of your 3 votes to elect me to the Wakefield School Committee on April 26th. And thank you for your time tonight.
Okay. First of all, I'd like to thank WCAT again. They do a great job here. This was a really well organized and professional debate, or forum, shall we say. I'd like to thank Bob and Mark for their questions. They're incisive and sort of opened up the discussion. And I'd like to thank all the candidates for participating and, more importantly, for throwing your hat in the ring, as it were, and running for school committee. Not an easy job. And so it's up to you, the voters, now, to make sure you get out on April 26th. Unless you vote, you're waiving your right and your responsibility to have an impact on the issues that were discussed here this evening. We will be having the election night show here on CAT. I have to read these off. The governmental channel, Comcast 22, Verizon 42, and RCN 131 on the WCAT Facebook channel, or by clicking on the Watch Now button on WCAT's website. I'd invite all the candidates, win, lose, or draw, to come down and participate in the forum. It's always great. I know years past, we'd have some people lose a close debate, and they'd come down. It's great to share the experience itself, the people you met, and the issues that you discussed, like I say, whether you win or prevail. So I invite all of you to show up that evening. And it's a lot of fun, too. Also, I just want to give a little shout out to our town meeting, May 16th. Again, it's your responsibility as a citizen to show up. It is the greatest form of democracy in the world. One man, one vote, one woman, one vote. Okay, we're going to have a break now before we do the town council debate. The debate will be on a different link. I have no idea what that means. I'm a Luddite, but I'm supposed to tell you that. Oh, now I found out it's going to be the same one. I do have the earpiece. That works. Okay, so once again, thanks to WCAT and thanks to you guys. This was really great. Again, vote. Thank you, and good night. Good evening, and welcome to the candidates debate for the Wakefield Town Council for the upcoming election on April 26th. I'm Bill Carroll. I'll be moderating the debate this evening. With me are Mark Sardella and Bob Burgess from the Wakefield Daily Item. They'll be asking questions of the candidates. There are 3 seats open, each for a 3-year term, and 4 candidates looking for your vote. This evening we have Jonathan Chines, Katie Dolan, who is remote because it's school vacation week, and Mike McLean and Bob Vincent. There'll be no opening statements this evening's debate. Questions will be asked by one of the panelists. The candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to the question, and then every other candidate will have a 1-minute follow-up to that question. To allow for as many questions as needed, I'm going to have to cut some people off and keep things in line, if you will. To do that, questions have not been provided ahead of time, and at the end, each candidate will be provided 2 minutes to give a closing statement. I think we'll kick things off with Mark Sardella has a question for Jonathan Chines.
Okay. Wakefield has about $8 million in federal ARPA funds. Town Administrator Mayo has outlined a general plan for spending those funds. What are your thoughts on prioritizing how those funds should be spent?
Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Bill and Bob and everyone at WCAT for hosting tonight. You know, it is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to have the money that we have available through ARPA for the town of Wakefield. It's rare that you have funds contributed to the town that allow you to do things that are innovative and different and exciting, and that's really the opportunity that we face today. As I think about how we use the funds, I think there are a couple of things that, for me, are top priorities. One is making sure that we are using the funding to help continue to provide preparedness support for Wakefield. We are not necessarily out of the woods of COVID yet, unfortunately. We are seeing numbers tick up again. We certainly hope that we don't see another surge like we did with Omicron, but we still may have COVID-related expenses that, as a town, we've got to face. And so that's one priority for the funds that we're getting through ARPA. A second is to support small business recovery. We had, fortunately, a lot of our businesses fare fairly well through the pandemic, thanks to the community and thanks to all the support that they had from residents in Wakefield. But, we need to help kind of get over the other side. We need to help those businesses make sure that they're positioned for the future. And so that's a second area of focus for me. Making sure that we can support them through things like facade improvements and other business improvements, making sure we can support them through recruitment and training of employees, things like that to help our businesses get back on their feet and return stronger than ever. And I think a final area of focus for me is supporting some of the infrastructure in town. Both improvements that we need to make to areas where we've seen deficiencies, such as our sidewalks and improving the sidewalk network. I'd also like to see us invest in infrastructure around some of our open spaces, and probably the biggest priority for me there is Lake Quannapowitt. I think we have a real opportunity to improve the pathway around the lake. I would actually love to see a full lakeside path that runs along the shoreline on the west side of the lake, something that we haven't done, and so that's something that I'd like to see us explore with the ARPA funds. Thank you.
Mike, 1 minute.
Since I have only 1 minute, let me focus perhaps more on infrastructure, Mark. The $5 million that we have that the town administrator has indicated should go for infrastructure. On that item, we have had a long-standing need that has not been met for affordable senior housing. And at one of our recent meetings, I did ask, do we have any town buildings that we might already have that we own, such as, for example, the old school? And I was told, well, that's rented. And I understand that. I know we rent the buildings that we have for the extra income. I don't have a problem with that. But I'm thinking if we have an existing structure that could be modified, perhaps a portion of that $5 million could go for a long unmet need in terms of affordable senior housing. Now, I don't think it should be overstudied either. I think we should get to it, and that's my hope.
Thank you. Bob.
Thank you for the question. I noted that we are slotted to get $8 million in ARPA funding, and I believe that the town administrator, when he briefed the town council, indicated perhaps 5.5 million of that being used for infrastructure. Having just spent the last month walking through all 7 precincts and visiting 1,000 homes in the town, I can tell you that every precinct needs a lot of work, not just on roads and sidewalks, but I think sometimes we also forget what's underneath the ground. We have to be aware of sewer lines, water lines, things like that are also part of the infrastructure package. I also think another thing that we ought to consider using the money on is for some mental health services, especially for our children as we emerge from the pandemic. I am someone that was stationed just outside the Pentagon on 9/11 and had to go back and work in the Pentagon immediately after 9/11. And I can tell you last year being the 20th anniversary of 9/11, a lot of times the experiences that you have come back, and we need to be mindful of taking care of our children as we recover from the pandemic.
Thank you. Katie?
Thank you. And thank you to everybody for allowing me to participate remotely tonight. So I would say for the ARPA funds, like Jonathan said, this is really, hopefully, a once in a lifetime opportunity because hopefully we won't experience another pandemic like that. But I do think that the biggest thing the funds could be utilized for would be infrastructure improvements. With that, our roads, sidewalks, and so forth. When I studied kind of what the ARPA funds can be slotted for, the one that immediately stood out to me was definitely the infrastructure piece. I would also like to see some of it going towards preparedness for a pandemic, continuing to come out of this pandemic, but also any other, disasters, so to speak, that we might need to utilize funding for, and what the town could do to prepare itself for those kinds of situations.
Thank you. All right, next question is Bob to Mike.
Mike, what is the most important issue currently facing the town council?
The most important issue, as you know, Bob, we have a number of issues active before the town council. I think that the single biggest issue right now, though, is development and overdevelopment and how we potentially, deal with that. And that's not just the town council, obviously, there are other boards involved. We have just recently reappointed a couple of individuals to the ZBA. We had some other good people that we couldn't get to. And Vice Chair Budd had a very good idea that those folks hopefully can apply for the bylaws committee and perhaps, continue to be involved. And I hope to reach out to them individually and directly. As you may know, Bob, I did raise this in the special election, my concern about overbuilding. I think the most important thing is what we need to do is we need to get back to revising our zoning. And I did participate. Jonathan was in the breakout room with me at the land use portion of the last meeting. And, that's all well and good, but if we have a bylaws committee every couple of years and then it takes a couple more years to get beyond that, to get actually to something, I would like to see the town do whatever it can to speed up a rewrite of the zoning bylaws so that we know where we're going. We've had a lot of growth, a lot of new growth, a lot of tall growth that I've commented on, and I would just like to see the town, for traffic reasons and for lifestyle reasons, perhaps slow it down a bit. And the quicker we get to actual zoning changes, I think the better.
Thank you. Bob, 1 minute.
Thank you very much. I would concur with zoning bylaws. Very quickly, the zoning bylaws were codified at town meeting in 1997. Although the town charter says that every year that ends in a 2 and a 7, the town council was supposed to appoint a bylaw review committee to look at all the town's bylaws. I can tell you from my research, the 02, the 07, the 2012, and the 2017 bylaw review committee, which I sat on, did not look at zoning bylaws. There's a reason for that. You can't ask 7 citizens or 9 citizens to look at zoning when they're not subject matter experts. We need to hire a zoning consultant to give advice to the bylaw review committee, and of course this is the year 2022, to look at zoning bylaws. We're also in year 2 of our 10-year master plan. The master plan is for 2030. We have the advantage that we have the year 2022 and the year 2027 to have a bylaw review committee look at zoning bylaws. And the bylaw review committee normally lasts for 2 to 3 years. So for most of the period that we have left for the master plan, we can have a bylaw review committee looking at zoning bylaws.
Thank you. Katie?
So I'm going to agree that development is the major issue that's facing the town council. However, I'm going to put my own kind of spin on it and say that it's also the communication to the public about the development that's going on around town. You can check in on any Facebook group, any area where there's a lot of citizens gathered, and people are going to be talking about how they feel there's too much development. They don't like the way, that buildings are too tall or the way that they're looking. And I think that people would maybe feel a little bit better if they understood a little bit more about the process and how those things are coming to be. You can't just come in and build a building, any way you want. There's a process that needs to be followed. And I think it would really be helpful for residents to be a little bit more informed and under getting the number to our 10% of affordable housing. If we could get that information more accessible to residents, I think it would be really helpful.
Thank you. Jonathan.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Certainly I think the process that we have underway to update the master plan and, as Bob mentioned, to sort of look at our zoning bylaws is an important piece. But, as we often deal with in town council, there's never a single important issue that we've got to work on. There are multiple. And so for me, one area of focus that's really critical is making sure we're investing back in the town. We've had some discussion already about infrastructure. We've put some money into our roads. We need to make sure that that money goes to making substantial improvements to our roads. I mentioned sidewalks as one area of opportunity and one area of focus that we've got to spend some time and money on. And also moving ahead with the new high school and making sure that we do get to a place where that feasibility study is completed and we break ground on a new building. Those are the things that, for me, I think rise to the top of the list in terms of priorities.
Thank you. All right, Mark. You started, right? Question to Bob. Mark, question to Bob.
Do you think Wakefield needs a town planner?
That's a very interesting question because I watched the town meeting that took place a number of weeks ago, and I noticed that the planning board and the zoning board of appeals indicated that we didn't need a town planner. I know we got a community and economic development person a few years ago who was supposed to augment what was being done by the town planner, and then the town planner retired. I haven't explored this enough, but I kind of right now agree with Councilwoman Dennehy, who looked at the possibility of getting a town planner and seems to be the major proponent of that. But I would put a little twist on that and say that perhaps we could get a town planner that we could share with another town. I know that we have limited size in our town, so therefore maybe we don't have enough for a town planner to be employed full-time, but I think we could explore the possibility and feasibility of getting a town planner that we would share with another town of comparable size.
Katie?
Yes, I absolutely think that we need a town planner. I think that with these major issues that we're facing, the top of everyone's mind is about some of these infrastructure things, about some of this development, and a town planner could really to guide us in that area. And while we have a great CBA and planning board, we really need somebody to kind of be in that town planner role, to be running all of these things and giving us their educated and honest opinion about where we should be going and helping with that. So yes, absolutely.
Jonathan.
Thank you. I think we need a town planning function. I'm not prepared to say yet if that is an individual that's hired full-time, if that's a shared resource, if that's something where we hire on a part-time basis. When we talked about this in the town council a couple of meetings ago, we did task Councilor Dennehy and Councilor Butt to work with some of the stakeholders in town to come up with a proposal around specifically what would we want to see in a town planner position. What's the nature of the position? What's the job description? And I think that's the right approach. Anytime we're adding resources at town hall, we've got to be careful about how we do that. We want to be, thorough stewards of taxpayer dollars. And so I look forward to seeing sort of the results of that and figuring out how we can fill what I think is an important need, but fill it in a way that is responsible and reactive to our obligations to steward the taxpayer dollars effectively.
Mike.
Just a minor correction on what my friend Bob said. I think there was some discussion by the planning board and the ZBA at our meeting, and I think that there was some discussion of perhaps needing possibly a half, full-time equivalent as a planner. I am supportive of having a town planner. It's not just Councilor Danahy. As talented as, and I believe, as well thought of as our economic development coordinator is, she's tasked with, for example, keeping the 40B list for the ZBA. She's doing all kinds of different functions. And those functions are not necessarily town planning functions. So I would be supportive, and I'll agree with Jonathan. We would have to look at it, whether we can get, whether it would be enough to have a shared planner with another community. But I'm not ready to say that we don't need a town planner. I think we do need that function.
Okay. Bob, your question to Katie.
Katie, does the town need a new high school, and why?
Yes, the town needs a new high school. So in the interest of full disclosure, I do teach for Wakefield Public. I teach at the Doyle Early Childhood Center, but yes, I absolutely see the need for a new high school. As people have mentioned about other topics, this needs to be done thoughtfully and it needs to be done purposely, so as to minimize impact to the neighborhoods around there, but also to give our students what they really need for a 21st century education. Our students are going from the Galvin Middle School, which was redone in an incredible way, onto an older high school. They should be going on to a high school that's meeting their academic needs. The most important thing in a school is the students, and we want to meet their needs. We know that the last NEASC accreditation was a little bit, we got dinged a little bit for the state of our high school, and that really, to me, is kind of the wake-up call that we need to really buckle down and focus on this, and build for the future, build for increased enrollment if that's what we need, and make sure that we're preparing our students for the future, whatever that might look like.
Thank you. Not unlike the school committee debate, this is sort of a big ticket issue, so 2 minutes for everybody, okay? Jonathan.
Thank you. So my answer to that question is absolutely, we do need a new high school. And Katie did a very nice job of summarizing some of the reasons why. The building has issues related to accessibility. It has issues related to the structural elements of the building. It's also not designed for a 21st century education. And one of the things, having 4 children in the Wakefield Public Schools, one of the things that I've come to appreciate is the way that we teach students these days is a lot different than it was when most of us were going to school. And the way that students interact during the school day is a lot different. It requires different kinds of spaces. I am fortunate to serve on the school building committee as the town council's representative because this is an area that is of special interest of mine. We've followed a really thorough process going through the feasibility study with the Mass School Building Authority so far. We started with 11 options, had narrowed that down to 3 to submit to the state back in February, and just about a week and a half ago voted to move forward with one preferred option to build a new school on the site where Beasley Oval is today. I'm really excited about this option. I think it gives us a tremendous opportunity to create a school that is going to meet our needs for decades to come. I think it's going to give us an option to build a building that the town will be proud of and that folks, not just kids who are attending the high school, but all residents can leverage, whether you're talking about the athletic facilities or the performing arts facilities that school will include. And I think it will be something that will be worthy of the excellent education that our teachers provide today. So I'm fully supportive of moving ahead. We have a lot of work left to do. We've narrowed down to an option. That option has not been designed yet. And so there is a lot of work ahead, and obviously a lot of work ahead to bring this to the public, gather feedback from residents and make sure that we come up with something that they can ultimately support. But I'm very excited to keep working on this over the course of the next year.
Thank you. Mike.
I'm going to concur with Katie and Jonathan. I agree that we need a new high school in Wakefield. I think everybody, at least over at your table, may recall my last debate, which was probably 20 years ago for school committee. And at that time, I was asked whether I was one of 4 candidates that was willing to say we needed a debt exclusion to rebuild the Galvin. If we had done that at that time, with a little more state participation, I think the numbers changed. That building might be getting closer to being paid as we reach this next new school building that we very much need. I'm already talking to people, and I'm hearing what we're going to hear, arguments relative to why don't we take care of those old buildings. And I get it, but we just had the school superintendent in front of the town council, and he talked about all the maintenance costs that we are spending. We are taking care of our old buildings. The problem is that sometimes you outgrow them. Sometimes your educational needs outgrow them. And that is and sometimes they just get old. And, people were talking about the new high school when I ran for school committee 20 years ago. And here we are, we're talking about it again. And I hope this time, we get it through. And I'm hoping that Jonathan can also get me an indoor track that I can run on.
Bob.
That's right. I think I'm in a somewhat unique position because back in February of 2019, I actually volunteered my time to help redraft the statement of interest, the 2019 statement of interest that was successful to the Massachusetts School Building Authority. I took an interest in that when I ran for school committee in 2018. What happened is in 2011, the accreditation people first started noticing problems with the high school. From 2016 to 2018, we submitted a statement of interest application that was denied. In November of 2018, the accreditation people downgraded the high school from probation to warning status. Immediately after that, in December 2018, the Massachusetts School Building Authority denied our 2018 application. Time was clearly of the essence since our accreditation has been downgraded. And I volunteered my time to go through all of the accreditation reports, all the architectural and engineering studies that had been done in 2016, all of the prior statement of interests. And I can tell you with 100% certainty that if I looked at all that documentation and I determined that we did not need a new high school, that is exactly what I would have told the superintendent of schools, the town council, and the school committee who trusted me with this undertaking. The other thing I think is very significant to note, it is extremely difficult to get into the core program for the Massachusetts School Building Authority. It is about an 18% acceptance rate. If the Massachusetts School Building Authority determined that we didn't need a new high school, we would not have been accepted into the core program. They may have told us to go to the accelerated repair program, which is how the new roof was put over the Greenwood Elementary School. They didn't do that, and they didn't turn us down. I think that is a determinative factor that the state organization that provides millions of dollars of funds said this was necessary.
Thank you. Now, where are we? Mark to Jonathan, back at the top, right?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Mark's to Jonathan.
Should Wakefield use public monies to fund free MBTA bus service?
So I'd have to say one of the things that has been a frustration for me over the course of my 3 years on the council has been the lack of service from the MBTA to our community. We spend a few $100,000 a year just for the privilege of having the commuter rail and bus lines run through Wakefield. And during that time, we've seen service cut, we've seen fares increase, and we've ultimately seen the MBTA put together a product that doesn't meet the needs of our community. And so as I look at one of my roles as a town councilor, it is to advocate for our community with the MBTA for all of the issues that are important to us. And that includes a number of things. One is making sure that we still have adequate service. I was one of the folks, along with our legislative delegation, to testify in front of the MBTA about a year ago when they were threatening to cut service, including evening and weekend service on the commuter rail, and to consolidate our bus lines and eliminate, actually, our bus lines. That includes making sure that we continue to advocate for accessible commuter rail stations, both in Wakefield Center and also Greenwood, something that the MBTA has not funded, and something that, quite frankly, I think they've sandbagged us a little bit as a community in terms of making those commitments. And it does include looking at different ways in which we can make public transportation more accessible, including potentially looking at free or reduced fares. The challenge right now is that we don't even have the flexibility to have that conversation. We don't even have the option to think about that with the MBTA. It's just not on the table based on what the MBTA has put forward in terms of their programs. I would love to see the MBTA offer more flexibility so as a town council we can have a conversation about what makes sense for our community and are there ways that we can help people meet the transportation challenges that so many of our residents have. If that includes doing a pilot that involves free or reduced bus fare, I think that's something that's worth trying, and I think that's something that we could potentially learn a lot about and something that we can use to continue to advocate with the MBTA for better service for Wakefield going forward.
Thank you. Mike, 1 minute.
Yeah, could you repeat the question quickly, Mark, please?
Yeah, should Wakefield use public monies to fund free MBTA bus service?
Not in my opinion. There's only so much that we can do with the budget, and I don't think that Wakefield funding bus service would be, I'm a pragmatist, and I just don't think it would be on the top list of my priorities.
Thank you. Bob?
One of the things that you're always going to get from me is that if I don't know an answer to a question and I haven't researched it and thought of it enough to come up with an informed opinion, then I'm not going to render one. So my answer to you, Mr. Sardella, would be that I have not had the requisite time to research that issue. So therefore, I cannot give you an opinion as to whether we should or not, but I can assure you if I get elected to town council, that is something that I would thoroughly research.
Thank you. Katie?
Yes, I would say no, that I do not think that Wakefield should use public money to fund free MBTA bus service. As Jonathan alluded to, for a variety of reasons, including the lack of reliability of the MBTA sometimes, the service cuts, I don't think that enough Wakefield residents are utilizing it or really in need of it at this time that it would make sense to put that money towards funding free MBTA bus service. I just don't see it as a top priority, so to speak, and one that would, I don't think that money would really bring in the benefit that maybe some people might think so if it was used in that way. So no, not unless there was a lot of changes or something different was happening.
Okay. All right. Bob to Mike, I believe, correct? Yeah.
Mike, do you think Wakefield is overdeveloped? And if so, what should be done to address it?
I feel like I'm circling back a little bit on that question, Bob, because I've indicated that I do think we've overdeveloped,
Right.
and what I think should be done is that we embark as quickly as we possibly can on extensive zoning study and changes so that we know where we're going in the future. Whether you're talking, and I understand, whether you're talking about Vision 2020, 2030, Vision 5000, not everybody's going to have the same vision. But as far as I'm concerned, this is a more immediate need. We really need to take care of the traffic issues and take care of the overbuilding as soon as we can, not further studies. That's just a repeat of what I said earlier, really.
Bob, 1 minute.
I know that there's strong opinions in town about residential development. What I will share is that we need to have more people involved at town meeting because that is where these decisions are made. In 2015, there was a change to zoning bylaw 190-32 multifamily dwellings, mixed-use development. By a vote of 123 to 41, this bylaw was amended by adding language designed to encourage the development of multifamily dwellings and mixed-use projects. I'm not opining whether that was a good decision or not. It seems to me that we should have controlled growth. But what I tell people when I was out campaigning over the last 2 months is that town meeting is where these decisions are made. And when you have that few people show up, that is the equivalent of 2 U.S. senators out of 100 or 6 or 7 congressmen out of 435 making decisions for the entire legislative body.
Thank you. Katie?
I would not say that Wakefield is overdeveloped. I feel like the word overdeveloped has a really negative connotation, and so I would not want to use that word to describe what's going on in Wakefield. Yes, there has been a lot of development, there has been a lot of growth, and as we've all touched on previously, we want to find a way to make sure that going forward, this growth is done in a thoughtful and productive manner. So again, circling back to, reviewing bylaws, absolutely. Working with property owners, working with, the people that are developing their land, to work with the ZBA, to work, all of those boards and committees and make sure that it's done in a thoughtful way that's going to be mutually beneficial for both the town and for the property owners. But no, I would not use the word overdeveloped.
Thank you. Jonathan.
Thank you. So, this is one of the reasons that I spearheaded the Vision 2030 effort. I think that there's a lot of noise around development, certainly on social media and other aspects. And I think there are pros and cons of the approach that we've taken so far. And the purpose of Vision 2030 was to really try to get to a place where we could distill what are the shared values and what are the shared visions that people have. And there's some things that we know that came out of that I think will be really informative for the master plan. One is that we want to make sure we're doubling down on protecting our natural resources, including the lake. And so I think that's something, whether it's in a lake overlay district or something else related to the lake, that we should be looking at. A second is that we really haven't focused enough on affordability. I'll give you an example. Near me, there's a subdivision that came into being. Beautiful homes, but they're selling for $1.6 million. We really need to come up with a better way of making sure that we support young families moving into Wakefield, working people, and seniors who want to stay here. And I hope that that's part of the discussion with the master plan.
Thank you. Thank you. Mark, question to Bob.
Incumbent members of the Zoning Board of Appeals are now being interviewed by a subcommittee of the Town Council before being reappointed. Is this a good idea, and do you think this should be the case for all other boards that the Town Council oversees?
Well, I do think that the Town Council has discretion to interview prospective folks for boards, committees, and commissions, and the Town Council should and is actively exploring their authority on how they want to decide to appoint people to boards. It's Massachusetts state law that zoning board members are appointed, but under the town charter, the Town Council has a lot of discretion to decide how they want to exercise appointing people to the board. I think that what the Town Council has done recently in deciding that they want to interview or start an interview process seems to be an appropriate step. If the Town Council desires to do that with other boards as well, where you need certain subject matter type experts. And as I alluded to before when I talked about the Bylaws Review Committee, which I sat on, we weren't subject matter experts in zoning laws, so we're not able to undertake looking at those things. To have people volunteer to sit on the Zoning Board of Appeals, I can understand the need to have a wide cross-section of subject matter experts in different areas, engineering, law, architecture, and whatnot, to serve on that because of the importance and the significant responsibility that the Zoning Board of Appeals has.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Katie.
Can you repeat the question for me? I'm sorry.
Sure. Incumbent members of the Zoning Board of Appeals are currently being interviewed by a subcommittee of the Town Council before being reappointed. Is this a good idea, and do you think this process should be the case for all other boards that the Town Council oversees?
Thank you. So I think that members of the ZBA should be appointed through the same process that's used for all of the other town boards, which, having served on other town boards, you typically submit a letter, a resume for the Town Council to review. I think that for the ZBA, I think that would be sufficient in order to do that, similarly to how we do all the other boards. If perhaps there are questions, maybe then town councilors would have to move to an interview. But as a typical standard, I do not think that the interview process is necessary. I think, as others have said, people who have experience in law, who have experience in construction, engineering would be good candidates for the ZBA. And the ZBA is a very, very important board. They do wield a significant amount of power, and it's very, very important work. So we want to make sure we have the best people, but I think that can be done through the resume or cover letter process.
Thank you. Jonathan.
I think this is an area where I'd like to spend more time in the Town Council thinking about the appointment process, not just for the ZBA, but for other boards. This is the first year we've done sort of formal interviews for the ZBA. I have not had a chance to kind of sit down with the Town Council chair, or the ZBA chair, or our Community and Economic Development director to get their feedback on how the process went, or the other candidates. I think I'd like to see us maybe have some open discussions around that, and also an open discussion as to what are the standards for when and if the town council interviews for different positions. I don't think it needs to happen for every board. Certain boards obviously have more adjudicatory authority, which to me does suggest a different standard for the level of review that we do. But I think it's something that we should spend some time in the town council thinking about well in advance of the next appointment cycle that opens up next spring.
Mike.
Mark, at the risk of incurring the ire of a certain local newspaper, I remember reading an article that indicated that this was something tantamount to a Senate hearing. It must have been a slow news day. It wasn't my idea. I think the council has the power to do it. But I really don't think that an interview committee composed of the town administrator, Steve Mayo, the chair of the town council, and the designee, who was Chip Tarbell, had anybody particularly intimidated in that process. But I agree with Jonathan. I'd like to think about this more, and I'd like to consider whether maybe the whole council would be better off doing an interview, whether that would be more open. I think it's a work in progress. It wasn't my idea. I think the town council had the authority to make the change. I didn't think it was a big deal.
Okay, we have just about 10 minutes left, and we need 8 for closings. So I think we're going to start with Jonathan to do his closing, okay? So.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Moderator, Mr. Sardella, Mr. Burgess, for the thoughtful questions. To Katie, Bob, and Mike, thank you for the great discussion today. Certainly appreciate sharing the stage. And also thank you to WCAT as well for hosting this. This is a lot of work, and as always, WCAT does a great job. You know, serving on the Wakefield Town Council for the last 3 years has been a tremendous honor, and I'm really proud of what we've accomplished together. We've improved livability in Wakefield by securing passage of Wakefield's senior property tax exemption and by hiring a community and economic development director who's helped secure millions of dollars of COVID relief funds for our businesses. We've promoted openness and good government by completing Vision 2030, a community-wide initiative to develop a vision statement for Wakefield that will guide policy decisions for years to come. Additionally, I've posted summaries of all our town council meetings online and held monthly office hours to make sure that I'm open to residents. And finally, we've invested in Wakefield's future by launching a feasibility study for a new high school and by embarking on a strategic road repair program for our town. We've done all of this while guiding Wakefield through an unprecedented global pandemic and while maintaining our fiscal health. Over the next 3 years, I'm excited to build on these successes to help secure a future that benefits all of Wakefield's residents. We can continue to improve the quality of life by promoting commercial growth to moderate the property tax burden on Wakefield's homeowners, and by investing in legacy projects that enhance our community, like an enhanced pathway around all of Lake Quannapowitt. We can continue to promote openness and good government by assuring that the vision statement we developed as part of Vision 2030 is translated into a new comprehensive master plan for Wakefield that promotes affordability and preserves what we cherish in our community. And we can continue to invest in Wakefield's future by launching construction on a modern high school that meets our students' needs and by expanding and improving Wakefield's sidewalk network. Thank you, Wakefield, for giving me the opportunity to serve as your town councilor for the last 3 years. I know that there's much that we can continue to accomplish together. I'm looking forward to the work ahead, and I humbly ask for your vote next Tuesday for re-election. Thank you.
Mike.
Thank you, WCAT. Thank you, members of the item, for your questions. Thanks, Katie. Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks, Bob. I have been a Wakefield resident and taxpayer at 19 Fairmount Ave for 31 years. I'm a former school committee candidate. I'm an attorney. I'm a CPA. I'm admitted in Massachusetts and Florida. I graduated from Boston College Law School. Go Eagles, go Celtics. And in the time that I have worked, most of my career has been involved in resolving controversies. That's what I do. That's what I do for a living. And I think that having tried cases in the Massachusetts courts, being a Massachusetts attorney, is one thing that will serve me well in terms of serving the town. I have no political aspirations. I don't seek any higher office. I'm the oldest member on the council right now, and If you elect my friend Bob, I'll be the oldest member on the council if you elect both of us. I'm 63 and I don't intend to run for a second term. I am simply in a position where, even though I'm still working 40 hours a week, mostly from home, I take the train on Fridays, I do have some time to give. It's not how much time you have, it's what you do with the time that you have. I was the person that got the 40B list. I was the person that found a building missing on the 40B list. I'm the person that ran for special election and somehow managed to win. I think that I've done a lot in the last couple of months, and I think many of you know me, and I will not shy away, however, from a fight. If I see something that I think is wrong, I will bring it to the attention of everyone, and I will seek the facts. Whether people are telling me I shouldn't for political reasons, I don't have any political agenda. Hopefully, I can count on one of your 3 votes. Check out Mike McLean for Town Council on Facebook if you want to see some of my writings. Thank you so much, Wakefield.
Thank you. Bob?
I would also like to thank WCAT, gentlemen, for your questions. And significantly, I do want to thank Jonathan, Mike, and Katie, because I wanted this to be a civil and congenial campaign, and it certainly was. What I'd like to do with my closing statement is talk about how I prepared to serve on town council after I decided to run in early February. To me, it was important to run an old-fashioned, self-funded, low-budget campaign. Throughout February and early March, I personally met or spoke with most of Wakefield's department heads and the chairs of boards, committees, and commissions. I wanted to obtain a thorough understanding of their roles, responsibilities, issues, and needs. On social and print media, I wrote position papers on our zoning bylaws, the 2030 master plan, ARPA funds, and town meeting. On March 4th, I embarked on a journey with my wife, Tracy, to visit the home of 1,000 fellow Wakefield residents. I wanted to personally introduce myself, answer questions, and provide reasons why I want to be a member of the town council. I enjoyed many engaging conversations about a variety of town-related issues with hundreds of voters. I strive to provide an answer to any question posed to me. On April 14th, my wife and I visited our 1,000th home. As an aside, Katie was 998, Mike was 999, and Jonathan was 1,000. Time is our most valuable commodity. I am retired and our 2 children are adults. Candidly, I have some caregiving responsibilities for Tracy and my parents, but rest assured, if elected, I will be able to devote considerable time every day towards serving Wakefield. I recognize that I will be one of 7 people representing over 27,000 fellow residents if you elect me to town council. It will be my most significant professional challenge since I served as an appellate judge in the United States Navy. I stand ready to accept the serious responsibility of serving on the town council if you, the Wakefield residents, deem me worthy. I respectfully ask for your vote on Tuesday, April 26th. Thank you.
Katie?
Okay, so thank you to everybody who made this debate possible, especially those at WCAT for letting me participate remotely. And I'd like to echo my fellow candidates' appreciation for this campaign. This, no matter what happens, April 26th, this has been a wonderful experience, and I appreciate getting to know everybody over these past several months. But in closing, a lot of you know me. I'm a lifelong Wakefield resident. I'm a young mom. I'm a homeowner. And it's important that our town council reflect a cross-section of our population. The young families here in Wakefield are an important piece of that puzzle, and I would like to help bring a voice to them at our town council table. That being said, as a town councilor, my primary job would be to represent all residents, no matter what their views or opinions were, and to feel that their voices were being heard and being brought to the table as their representative. I like to say that at night, I want to be able to go to bed and lay my head on the pillow and know that I did what was right over the course of the day. And that's all I need. I don't need accolades or congratulation. And that's how I would feel about being a town councilor. If I felt that I did my best to serve the people of Wakefield, then that's what's right. That would be what I would want. I am definitely passionate about Wakefield. I'm knowledgeable and I'm very motivated. And you can be assured that if I was elected town councilor, I would work very, very hard to represent all of you and to keep open lines of communication with both the people in our government and also with our residents. I would be very reachable and very accessible to all of you. So I humbly ask for your vote on April 26th. Please get out and vote. It is so, so important, and I hope that you'll consider me for one of your 3 votes.
Thank you. Well, that brings us to a conclusion to tonight's town council debate, if you will. I'd like to thank Mark and Bob for thoughtful and insightful questions, which made this a lively debate. I'd also like to thank WCAT, as usual. They do a first-class job. You know, I'm a big cheerleader of WCAT, and I got roped into being back on the board. It's your right and your responsibility as a citizen of Wakefield to get out and vote on April 26th. If you don't, you know, you're letting down your fellow citizens, you're letting yourself down, and you really shouldn't have much to say if you're not out to vote. We will be having the election night coverage, as I point out during the school committee debate. All of you are welcome. Win, lose, or draw, you should come down. Because, as I've said in past years, you know, it's interesting to find out not just, you know, what your positions are, but how the campaign went, some interesting stories and that kind of stuff. And it's always a lot of fun. Win, lose, and draw. So I hope to see all 4 of you next Tuesday night down here. That coverage will be at 8 a.m. live on WCAT's governmental channel. That's Comcast 22, Verizon 42, RCN 13, on their Facebook channel, or by clicking on the Watch Now button on WCAT's website. Also, I'm going to throw in a little plug here for town meeting, which is on Monday, May 16th. Again, the purest form of democracy there is. You're the people who come to town meeting are the legislative body of this town on all major appropriations and laws, and it really is, again, another responsibility as a citizen of Wakefield to show up. So thanks again, and mostly I forgot, but anybody who throws their hat in the ring to run for office should be admired. It's public service, and it's worthwhile, and it's worthy of you, and I appreciate all of you guys running for it. I say on behalf of everybody in the town, as your town moderator, that we appreciate you guys running for this. So thanks again, and good night, and thanks again to WCAT.